know, we're having an important press conference today to talk about the proper access to gym space and recreation, but it goes more than should a child have a place to run and play. It's about safety also. Share with us a space like this. What is your thoughts?
Yeah, as a public school athletic league commissioner, my name is Ted Gustis. One of the things that I'm responsible for doing as a boys basketball commissioner is to go around and check the gyms to make sure that the gyms are safely put together. And here, when I walked into the gym to attend this press conference, the first thing I noticed was here, the edges on here need to be padded. If kids hit their head on this here, it's dangerous, very dangerous. I don't even know how, I wonder how many kids really hurt themselves. This is real dangerous. You have heat on here, this is very hot. Okay, so this whole thing is really a major challenge.
And the dents here tell me something hit this because they're dents, they're chipped paint, etc. And what about this wall over here?
Well, any of these walls, imagine kids playing basketball here. I don't know if they allow them to play full court, but any kind of basketball. It's concrete wall, any type of concrete wall, they should be padded, just like those things over there are padded. And if a youngster is running and he's looking this way to get the ball or whatever, he can go smack it.
Wow. And I know on the other one, the edge here is a pointed edge. So if you have a person that jumps up for the ball, etc., and these pads here, the space here is also troublesome.
Yeah, so right here, you're talking about here, and especially if the elementary school kids are probably here, but here, this is a corner. You got to pad that off because that will hurt them right there. And then the other thing is, if you look at our backboard they have here, the challenge, we wouldn't have that with elementary school, but if you were doing this in high school, it should be padded.
Around the edges?
Yes, because, can we walk over? Because what happens if it's not padded, the pads are not around here, then these are the corners that they can hit their head up. They go up, get it.
Right.
And we can't even have basketball games started unless all of that is done.
You know, it's interesting, a trained set of eyes like yours walking here, the average person would walk in and say, hey, this place is safe, but your eyes are looking different based on your years of watching the sports and what can go wrong, and that's a big difference.
45 years of doing this, and it's so important for the safety first. That's the most important thing, safety first. And they attempted to do it with the pads here, but they still have more to do. I don't know if they ran out of money or what, but they have to really, some work to do here.
Can't take a shortcut.
Can't take a shortcut, we're gonna lose one of our kids. Yeah.
Thank you, Ted.
Hey,
Appreciate you, man.
It's a pleasure, man, always.
Hi, I am Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, and I'm joined by Councilman Reynoso and the district leader, Tommy Torres, and an amazing principal, Sandra Noyola, here at PS 147, that shares a space with Young Women's Leadership School of Brooklyn. It is clear as you walk around this building that the Department of Education, the City of New York, receives a failing grade for the type of recreational space for our children. Not only is it inadequate in size, but it is also a safety hazard. When you look at the radiators that are here, the sharp edges that are here, the small space, this is an environment that is unsafe for children to play in as we move forward to creating an atmosphere where we develop the full personhood of our children. We want to point out many of these inadequacies, and we pointed out in our report, physical education, access, and infrastructure. We did an analysis throughout the borough of all of our schools and asked our educators to look at these areas and spaces and communicate directly with us. We're having this conversation on the eve of the City Council's oversight hearing on physical education and athletics in New York City School. It will take place tomorrow at 1 p.m. And this report is being released as an analysis of all the Brooklyn schools. Earlier this year, my partner and friend in government, Councilman Antonio Reynoso, reached out to my office about conducting a survey to identify the true need for dedicated physical education in the Council 34th District. This was an amazing idea, and I want to thank the council person. And we saw that it was not only something we should do here, but we believe it should be done throughout the entire borough, and that is what we did. And Councilman Reynoso will go into that as he give his brief comments as well. 307 schools in Brooklyn responded to our call, and the results were clear. This needs to be a priority for the city, that it needs the level of support that comes from a dedicated, high-level official. The health and fitness of our children cannot be under the leadership of a deputy who is also responsible for school buses and school food. We see what that has gotten us. We need a czar, a physical education czar, who is going to focus on the health, well-being, and recreation of our children. We cannot continue to have this as an afterthought where a math teacher puts on sweats and try to teach physical education. That is not sending the right signal and the right message, and is not acceptable. This is why we believe that this czar should be in charge of expanding gym spaces as well as all sports-related issues in the Department of Education. We need to be clear, physical activity isn't elective. It's an essential component of developing a child's full personhood. A high-level sports czar will ensure DOE doesn't continue to drop the ball in delivering the quality infrastructure and programming that students need in physical fitness and interscholastic athletics. This includes trained and dedicated physical education instructors are available at schools and students, rather than those who are simply notified in a short period of time to now play a dual role outside the classroom and come inside what is a makeshift and not always a gym space. Our survey results show that about 1 out of every six Brooklyn schools have no dedicated gym space. 1 out of every 6 Brooklyn schools. This is far too high in an age when diabetes is rampant or childhood obesity is rampant. The lifestyle of our children of living a stationary life and developing bad habits that they believe not movement is important is causing and is feeding our healthcare crisis. In New York City, 1 in 5 kindergarten students and 1 in 4 Head Start students, they are obese. That is a terrible indicator that we're failing to adequately address this serious healthcare crisis. Of those schools that do have dedicated gym space, more than half need to share that space with another school, including availability of physical education program and wear and tear on infrastructure. Even schools that have dedicated gym spaces have responded to troubling comments reflecting conditions that are unfit or even dangerous for children, such as gym space with large support pillars, as we see here. These are unbelievable to have this in a recreational space, and a lack of pattern along the wall. So it's more than just a few pillars to cosmetically give the impression that it is safe. This entire space should be padded for our children so they don't harm themselves. Undersized spaces for large student body, buckling floors, lack of air conditioning, converted space that is unfit for physical activities, brittle backgrounds and equipment, spaces that are inappropriate to serve special needs students. We completely ignore the needs of special needs students, and when it comes down to physical activity. So the mayor has taken some very positive steps by dedicating $385 million to gym infrastructure, as well as $100 million for hiring gym teachers. But based on our assessment, the suggestion is that we only address a portion of the needs. There needs to be a full infusion of capital, resources, and most importantly, commitment and dedication to addressing this issue. We cannot allow schools to be using inappropriate space for gym activities. Thus, therefore, we must plan for the future. I believe that no school that is on the drawing board to be built now should be allowed to move forward without ensuring that you have adequate gym space within that structure. We need to put a halt on the new construction and ensure that a gym space is inside that new construction. We need to prioritize the capital funding now for every school, not some schools based on the geographical location or the economic status of a district, but all schools. This includes updates to current spaces that haven't been renovated in decades. We can do this by expanding public-private partnership to develop better spaces for our students. We were able to accomplish this by teaming up with some of the organizations such as the NBA and TBS. We also need to renovate our open parks that are near the school areas to allow our schools to participate in using those space, because the extension of physical education should go beyond the school building. We should use all of our community resources until we're able to scale up to the level that we desire. Gym spaces are not only important for our children during school day hours, they're vital too for youth and community development. My administration has been committed to developing the full personhood of a child, and I believe the Chancellor Carranza shares this commitment, and we look forward to future announcements on how we're going to move this conversation forward. The DOE is able to move in the right direction on this issue, especially in a time of new leadership at Tweed. The former leadership did not fully embrace the importance of utilizing the school spaces to create healthy environments for our children. We know this is on the city's radar, but we want it to remain on the city's radar as we continue to move forward and create an environment that is important. When you look at this space, in conclusion, the number one cause of death for children up to the age of 18 is trauma. We only have one trauma pediatric center in Brooklyn at Methodist Hospital. This community does not have a trauma center. When you have a trauma center, it decreases the cause of death by 25%. So when you have communities such as here in Bushwick without a trauma center, the emergency room does not do enough, as we see some of the wait times in our emergency rooms and the impacts of those emergency rooms. It is crucial that we are not only reactionary, but we want to prevent trauma-related incidents and accidents. We do that by providing a safe environment. This is not a safe environment. This is a feeder for trauma, and as a result, it is a feeder to harm our children, particularly those who don't have adequate medical care in their communities. We want to be not reactive, we want to be proactive. Every child deserves a safe space. Every child deserves an opportunity to address some of the physical ailments that come with lack of movement. We all talk about it, but we have to now show that we are about addressing this crisis that has really engulfed our community. I want to now bring on the Councilman Reynoso, and I really want to thank him again for having the insight to see how important it is to continue to ensure our children have a safe space so they can develop their full personhood. Councilman Reynoso.
Thank you, Borough President. First, I want to thank the Borough President. When we started this conversation, they were looking for more assistance in determining where they should be spending their money. For the last 4 years, the Borough President has set us on a course where every single school will have adequate technology and make sure that we're up to par with the cities with the schools in the city of New York. We've been able to accomplish that over the last 4 years. Then my chief of staff, Jennifer Gutierrez, said we don't necessarily need any more money for technology. We've done a good job. Thank you, Borough President. And she mentioned the need for physical space and the fact that schools, especially in districts that are old like Williamsburg and Bushwick, that have schools that were built in the early 1900s, that there is almost no adequate gym space. The mayor has dedicated some funding to make this happen in some schools, but there is not a comprehensive, all-inclusive plan that would make it so that we'd have adequate physical space in all of our schools in the city of New York. I'm also a huge advocate and a proponent for equal access to sports for all children. In this school, it would be very difficult for the middle school to field a competitive basketball team that can go around and play sports in other parts of Brooklyn and the city of New York. They would be able to have no home games should that exist, again, if they're playing against other schools in the district. Those are all things that I believe are extremely important to the development of a child that we're falling short on. I really feel that we have an opportunity to speak on equity in these schools. Equitable school sports, equitable school facilities. And it isn't until we see information and policy produced like this example coming from the Borough President's office that truly gives us an opportunity to finally start speaking on it. So again, I can't emphasize enough how the Borough President has been able to put forth a way to communicate to him about the funding that we're getting out into our communities and to focus it, not to just throw money at anything because it's good for ribbon cutting, but actually having a plan that makes sense for our borough. And the Borough President did that, so I want to thank him again. And again, I want to thank Jennifer Gutierrez, my Chief of Staff, that came to me and said that we need to really think about this. The last thing that I want to emphasize is that Carranza has talked about equity, especially racial equity in our education system. This is another example of where we've fallen short in the past, and we hope that he can walk the talk. And that is very important. Carranza has been speaking very well about equity, but has he been able to implement anything that shows that he's serious about it? So we're looking forward to him being a partner in making this happen, and we have something for him already. We've done most of the legwork here in the Borough President's office. Now it's about time Carranza steps up and does something. So I want to thank you again, Borough President, and thank you for your time.
Well said, well said, well said. I think we cannot underemphasize what the councilman stated. Oftentimes in many of our communities that are economically challenged, the belief is, well, we're just going to give you a space. And as long as you have the space, that is adequate. We don't look at those non-tangibles, those things that you will often ignore. You cannot play a home game here. You would be embarrassed to bring someone to your school home here. There are no bleachers. There are no real atmosphere to have competitive sports. And it prevents our young people to develop those skills, so they would not be open to get some of the college scholarships that are attached to being able to improve your game level. And so when you start drilling down to the smaller level, you understand the negative message that we're sending. We can go to schools here across the city who have the adequate space, the adequate staff, the team, everything to develop children so that when they go to apply from schools, they have the lacrosse skills, they have the basketball skills, they have the football skills, they have all of those skills. Bushwick deserved the same things and that any other district deserved. We have an amazing principal here, Principal Sandra Noyola. She is fantastic, and we want to thank her for her partnership and what she's doing here in this school, and we want to have her come and say a few words.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Borough President Eric Adams for hosting this press conference at our school, Councilmember Antonio Reynoso, and District Leader Tommy Torres, alongside esteemed partners in education. Thank you for bringing to light this very important work that all of our students deserve. It is a pleasure to be here with you today, and I am looking forward to partnering with you and working with the DOE to ensure that all of our students have what they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we also want to bring on our district leader in this area, District Leader Tommy Torres.
Good afternoon, everyone. Tommy Torres. I wear several hats in the community. One, the Williamsburg Sports League Commissioner, educator for 22 years, assistant principal. But I come here today as our district leader here in Williamsburg and Bushwick, and an advocate for our students, for our kids, for our families. And I first want to say that I'm joined here by so many products of myself, a product of sports, pop water football, Greenpoint Little League here in the community, Williamsburg Sports League, And I'm proud to be with, also, I have our principal, Nayola, who I started my career 22 years ago, and also a product here of the community, and sports were important to all of us here. Sports, physical activity, it made us the persons that we are today, the educators, the leaders that we are today, how important that is in my life. I want to thank the Borough President for bringing us here together, for the investment that you made in technology, investment in STEAM. And now we want to let the Chancellor know we want to continue that effort in physical education, as we will be able to produce leaders in the community. Now, what's great, and recently as we had a Senate up in Albany that turned blue, we have a majority now to work with our assembly members, and I don't know if we have any state representatives here today, but they're going to go up there now to make sure that fight for that budget, fight for that fiscal equity, fight for that money that's owed to our city. So I'll be proud to join the Chancellor with our councilman, with our Borough President, go up to Albany and say schools deserve the money that we won back in the early 2000s. That campaign finance equity money that is owed to us. That money will allow us to pay for some of these upgrades, to pay for sports facilities that is so needed here in our community. So I want to thank the Borough President, Councilman, thank you for the effort, for all you do for our schools here in Williamsburg and Bushwick. Senator Nayola, keep doing great things with our students here at PS 147. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And our last speaker is Ted Gustis, Commissioner of Boys Basketball here in the great borough of Brooklyn. Ted?
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure again. Number one thing, when I walk into the gym, normally what I do is I go around and I look at the gyms and make sure they fit so that the kids can have a safe environment. Number one thing is safety. And boy, when I walked in here early, I came here early, and right away I saw this gym facility, and I knew that it was not a safe environment. And you did everything you possibly can do. You need some more paddings and all those things. You would have to actually pad this whole place up. But I'm glad to see that guys are making moves to try to be. Sports is something big in our communities. Athletics has taken me. I coached basketball for 45 years. And I've seen so many young people go on to college and finish their education, got scholarships and so forth. And some kids that did not go, I don't know if you guys know, statistically, it's stated that 90-something% of young people that play in sports coming from the neighborhoods that we have will go to college. I didn't say play college basketball. I said go to college. Just because they with a nice environment, they have people supervising them and giving them things. So I really want to say that we really support the fact that we need more facilities for our kids, and hopefully something comes out of this here and make it work. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you. Open to any questions? Yes. Mm-hmm. That's a good question. The school is over 100 years, and we don't know exactly what was the first mindset in using this space, what it was actually used for. But the need of physical education was always present, even 100 years ago. But now the need is even more present because our children, for the most part, they live a stationary life.
The other question, it looks like these are radiators, and what is that, a covering so kids don't hit the radiators? But they're metal.
That's a good question. And not only, yes, they are radiators, but also there are exposed pipes behind them, as you see over here as you walk around. This covering, the pipe is hot, so number one, some of this covering here you see is dented, so that's a clear indicator that something hit it. And second, a child could not only get hurt from hitting the metal, but they also can burn themselves on the exposed pipe.
It's metal, but the heat goes right from one of the pipes to the metal.
It's supposed to diffuse the heat. Yeah, it's supposed to protect the pipe.
I just want to say, this site we shouldn't allow kids to be playing on this site. I want to credit the principal who actually allows them to go to the rear portion of the auditorium that has some level of open space to allow the kids to step and play sports there. And I would love for the principal to come up to speak on what she tries to do to accommodate the need for physical space. But again, this should not be a place where children should play sports. And she's been creative about allowing them to play sports in an open area in the back of the auditorium as opposed to in this dedicated gym space.
It's not controversial.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
As a principal of a school, it is my purpose to ensure that we use the spaces at our school as effectively as possible for all of our students. So our physical education teacher comes through us via support from the New York City Department of Education through the Office of School Health and Wellness. And the DOE has stipended part of his salary so that we can have a robust physical education program at our school. However, we have to embrace the challenges that the physical space causes. So we are very strategic in how our students move within this space. We are very careful that the children are safe to the best of our ability within the space. As Councilmember Reynoso mentioned, the previous council member, Diana Reina, allocated a schoolyard for us down the block from the school, which our children utilize for physical education space and movement. And our physical education teacher has also been trained on an initiative offered to us via the New York City Department of Education named Move to Improve. We are a Move to Improve school. And this program trains teachers and all educators on how to incorporate physical movement throughout the course of the day. So these are just some examples of the many ways that we, as a school community and myself as a principal, have to really think outside of the box and be strategic on how to ensure that our children are moving. The facility is challenging, but we do our best to work with what we have. Gracias. De nada. De nada.
In terms of what could be done in the short term to improve the situation, what are some of the things that your report and your research has found?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, there are short-term, middle-term, and long-term. Short-term, we have, until we get the physical spaces built, we have to do creative ways of having our young people have physical activity. Having days where they're walking up and down the steps to and from their classroom, doing some routine and exercises. How do they move in place in their schools? Standing desks have proven to be successful. It's clear that the new tobacco is sitting down all day. Having our children do a lesson where they're standing up, but we have to get our children moving. The second is to utilize pre-existing school spaces. We were able to lobby the government, City Hall, and the mayor's office to get $1 million to open our schools to allow children to use those spaces during off hours. Third, as I stated, in a long-term fashion, we must really examine any new schools that are being built. We cannot have same floor plans that really put the physical activity space as an afterthought. We must ensure in the allocation of resources that the mayor has done to train new physical education instructors, that must be part of the plan. You can't continue to have a history teacher put on some sweats and sneakers and call him a physical education instructor, and that is what we have been doing. Far too many do not have the adequate space. Then we could partner with local facilities to utilize YMCAs and other local facilities, outdoor spaces in the summertime. The wintertime is not appropriate. Our children are not the mailman. They don't go out and play in the snow, sleet, and rain. We need to make sure they have a well-protected space that's an air-conditioned space to ensure no issues of safety. Lastly, right away, we need to do a complete analysis of all of the spaces and have an emergency infusion of resources to pad every location. Every location while children are playing in must be padded completely. This is a low-hanging fruit that we can do. We should not have concrete walls, sharp walls, radiators, other objects that can cause injury to our children. Number one, loss of life for children to the age of 18 is trauma. This is trauma waiting to happen here. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of the city council, there's a hearing, I think, tomorrow,
Yes. So
on Monday. What are some of the steps, the action steps along the lines of what the borough president said they can
So the hearing, so the hearing is going to speak to physical space and the lack thereof in the city of New York. We're asking the Department of Education to let us know the progress they're making in building out new space and the problems they're having with spaces like this. We're also talking about sports equity. At this moment, there's a system that exists in the Department of Education that allows for older schools to maintain the level of sports programming and sports teams that it has. And new, smaller schools that tend to be black and brown don't get access to the same type of sports teams. So if you're an older school, like let's say FDR, and you have 27 teams, you keep those 27 teams all throughout the life of your building. If a new school opens up and they want a basketball team, they can't get it. And what that ends up doing is that any new buildings or any new schools that open up end up having no sports teams whatsoever. So we're working on figuring out exactly how it is the Department of Education doles out those teams and builds equity through them. But again, it just really speaks to the fact that we need to be more comprehensive about how we're looking at education, and we're finally paying attention to the physical portion of it, and this space is a problem. I am going to work with the borough president. Short term, we're looking to be helpful to this school. I do want to say 3 to 4 years ago, I came to the principal here and said that I wanted to help with building out a new space. The number that I got back from the Department of Education was $6 million. That is just something that I don't have. I could ask the borough president for all that money, and it would be inequitable for him to put that significant amount of funding into one school in one part of Brooklyn when he has to take care of all of Brooklyn. So I was hoping that the Department of Education and the mayor can handle that. To date, we've seen no progress on that, but I am going to look for a short-term solution to allow for this space to be at least safe for the kids to play throughout.
Thank you. It's interesting about the adequacy of spaces.
8 years ago, this auditorium over time has become worse and worse, non-functional, and really a safety issue for our students and families. As you can see, these original, and still no work has begun.
The system is just
Okay. Similarly, we share the school with.
right.
Conducive to an open physical education space and what we need. So by the time they're all done with that, they have 15 minutes only to play.
Right.
So